When I was a kid, my family, we used to all gather around television on Sunday nights, and we'd be watching, one of the shows we'd be watching was the Ed Sullivan Show. So the Ed Sullivan Show, for those of you who don't know what that is, was a variety show on Sundays where they would bring in people, comedians, stars, singers, dance acts. I actually think the Beatles even got their start on the Ed Sullivan Show. Anyway, they used to bring on this guy that would balance plates on the end of very flexible sticks. And it was wild to watch the guy. In fact, my memory of it is he had the entire stage and he would have plates spinning on the top of these sticks that he would keep moving by shaking them. They were very flexible. They were different heights. Some were 6 feet, some were 8 feet, some were even below his shoulder line. But he kept them going. Now that was my memory. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, because I've looked on YouTube and I've found some things similar to that, but not at the grandiose scale that my memory gives it. But anyway, the reason I'm telling this story is this is kind of a little bit about how we're going to work. The nature of our work with you, the nature of all of the work that we've done around the world has kind of led us to this way of doing things where it's plate spinning. We start one plate in one stick, and then we start another plate on another stick, and then we start a third thing going on another one, and then we go back and forth and we keep them going, and we keep them managing them. So this is not that very familiar linear kind of learning that people usually do. They're going to call this nonlinear. Of course, the word linear means sequential, in a sequence, a system, a framework that follows one step after the other, and you can't do the second step till you've done the first step, etc., etc. Great example is how we learn math as children. We first learn our numbers, we then do addition, which allows us to do subtraction, which then allows us to do multiplication, which then allows us to do division, so on and so on. There's this sequential path. Well, nonlinear learning is, well, as the word implies, not that. It is not in a sequential pattern. It can actually start almost anywhere along a continuum. It can start over here and end over there. So that's what we're talking about in this world of nonlinear. You can find many, many examples of linear versus nonlinear. You can find it in literature. The nonlinear narrative, which will start off with, maybe start in 1995, then it jumps to 2004, and then it jumps back to 1982 or centuries ago. So it's that nonlinear form where maybe like a history book is more in a linear fashion. This happened in 1812, which then this allowed for something to occur in 1885, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so I think you get what we're talking about. So most of our work is in that world of what we call nonlinear learning or nonlinear thinking. Now, that's not to imply that there isn't great value in the linear thinking and versus nonlinear thinking. And we're actually at times going to do both. As an example, as a facilitator, there's great value in being able to keep as many plates spinning as possible. But then you also know when you're in the mode of a trainer that there would be value to be able to give people a sequential order of things. Now I want to give you an example that we're going to introduce you to called the first 10. So when Brady first introduced me to the first 10, it sounded like to me, of course, okay, first 10. That means one, you do this, then number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, on and on and on until you got through 10. And those were the first 10 things you made sure you did before you started working with people, whether it be as a facilitator, a mentor, an educator, whatever. But when he spoke about it, he spoke about it in terms of these are the 10 things you want to make sure, the 10 plates you want to make sure you've got spinning and completed before you move on. So it's not in a sequential order. It could be in a sequential order if you wanted it to be. Yet what we're saying is those 10 things would have to be in place before you move on. And those are called the first 10, which is an example of both a way to use linear learning if you so choose, or a non-linear framework and linear framework. So it's really important that you understand that what we're going to do in this training is a lot of what will be non-linear. And we want you to get used to that idea because it can be disconcerting. You can be someone who your performance is best when it's in a step-by-step function. And if you are that person, feel free to let us know, because that's fantastic and that we will keep that in mind. But we really want you to know we're going to start plates, and then it'll look like we maybe let that plate go, but we've kept it spinning, and we're going to move over and do something else. A really great way to look at this is riding a bicycle, which is an example of both those things happening, the linear and the nonlinear. So when I learned to ride a bike, and I'm assuming that you all learned to ride a bike, my father was my coach. So he would have been like the mentor or the teacher or the facilitator, or even you could call him the trainer, because he trained at times, he facilitated at times, for sure. But if you look at the bicycle, learning to ride a bicycle, there's a series of step-by-step things you would do, beginning with getting the bike in your hands. And then you're going to put a hand on one of the handlebars, and you may put the other hand on the other handlebar. Then you're going to step your leg over the bike, which I'm not going to do. And then you'd put your both feet on the pedals, and you'd start to pedal. So there's this linear, sequential pathway for you learning a bike. But then my father, when he was coaching me, he would be doing this crazy thing. Of course, he's trying to hold it back, and then he's pushing me off, and he's saying to me, actually in my memory, he's yelling, "Find your balance," or "Get your balance." Now, of course, maybe I was 6 years old. It was crazy. Like, what's he talking about? And every time I started thinking about where's my balance or get my balance, of course, that's when I fell on the bike. And get up, dust off. He'd wipe a few tears from time to time, and then put me back on the bike. I'd start again. He'd say, "Get your balance." I'd fall again, and we'd start over. That sequential pattern, plus that attempt at that non-linear aha moment. So at one point, he even told me where he thought my balance was. He said, "It's behind your belly button." Of course, I actually looked down, tried to look through my shirt, imagine that balance was right behind my belly button. Boom, I went to the ground. But the moment I understood balance, and didn't understand it, experienced the balance in that nonlinear fashion, that aha moment, I had it. There it was, and I could repeat it over and over and over again. I could do the sequential part, but then I could do that most valuable part that then became second nature. That was that balance in riding the bicycle. And the other great part about the nonlinear aspect of learning is that it tends to translate into all areas where that skill would be, or that experience would be very valuable for you as a human being. So I loved walking the curbs on the way to school, trying to balance myself on the curbs, and it was an effort. But once I experienced balance on a bicycle, and no doubt that practicing walking on the curb helped me ride the bicycle, that kind of work then translated to where my curb walking became very, very skillful. And the other areas that I would attempt to play and live my life in using balance. So that is where we're headed with this conversation. Is there'll be times where we'll probably have some linear aspect to it, where step by step will be maybe even conversationally. But most of what we want you to understand is it will be doing this thing called nonlinear learning or nonlinear presentation. Keep the bicycle in mind, keep those plates in mind, and that's how we're going to work. All right, thanks, bye.